जी को दिल से चाहता है और हिमाचल के लिए नरेंद्र मोदी जी के मन में दिल में भी बहुत बड़ा स्नेह है, क्योंकि वर्षों तक उन्होंने काम किया यहाँ पर और उस काम की याद आज तक बहुत पुराना एसोसिएशन और एक बहुत इमोशनल कनेक्ट है उनके हिमाचल के साथ।
ये 1 लाख गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स प्रॉमिस किया है कांग्रेस ने, इसका तोड़ क्या हो, काट क्या है आपके पास?
हर चुनाव में वो यही बोलती है, यही कांग्रेस, इनकी कमिटमेंट थी कि हम हिमाचल प्रदेश में 2012 के चुनाव में इन्होंने कहा था कि हम हिमाचल प्रदेश में हर एक परिवार से सरकारी नौकरी देंगे। सत्ता 5 साल रही, क्या दी हमने? इन्होंने ये कहा था बेरोजगार भत्ता बेरोजगारों को देंगे, लेकिन दी उनने क्या? इन्होंने कहा था कि हम, उस वक्त भी कहा था उनने, उस वक्त भी आंकड़ा यही था एग्जैक्टली, मुझे मालूम नहीं, 1 लाख से ऊपर ही था आंकड़ा उस वक्त की, बेहतरीन नौकरी देंगे, लेकिन दी क्या?
तो आप ये मानते हैं कि वो प्रॉमिस करते हैं, डिलीवर नहीं करेंगे? सबसे
बड़ी बात देखिए, कांग्रेस की बात पर लोग ना विश्वास करते हैं, ना उन पर भरोसा है।
I want to understand from you, what are the issues that will decide your vote this time?
I guess I will vote for choose the leader basically. The leader must be important because the parties are corrupted almost every time.
So you'll go for the face?
Yes, I will go for the face, and the previous work is not much appreciable in the Himachal Pradesh.
और face and party दोनों factors important हैं?
फेस एंड पार्टी दोनों इम्पोर्टेंट है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं बीजेपी जो है राष्ट्रवादी विचारधारा से बहुत प्रभावित हूँ। जो आजकल के जो हमारे जो देश है उसके परिप्रेक्ष्य में हमारे देश को नरेंद्र मोदी की बहुत आवश्यकता है देश को आगे लाने के लिए। इस बार सरकार नहीं, रिवाज बदलेगा, ये
बीजेपी का नारा है।
बीजेपी का नारा है, लेकिन इन्होंने अच्छा काम किया है।
Is jobs an issue for you? Is that a big concern?
Yes, ma'am. Government is not working on the employment, so they should see this factor, ma'am. So if they change this, ma'am, like they will give employment, then definitely I think that government will win.
Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in this edition of The Nation at 5. We are coming to you live from the newsroom here at CNN News 18. I'm Anand Narsimhan, and the spotlight is going to be around Hinduism, Hindutva, and all around these adjectives and these different coinages. The common thread that binds them together is a growing narrative of Hindu messiah or Hindu hate. Let's start with the various issues. First up, another aspect of secessionism with the Khalistani event, which is again targeting Hindus in Canada and Hindu establishment. So we'll start with that. This has happened in Brampton in Canada. Now increasingly, this referendum movement, the Khalistani movement, is gathering a certain amount of pitch and pace and chorus in Canada, on Canadian soil. And despite multiple concerns that have been raised, there is not much that's been done to try and A, stop these voices, B, arrest those who are sowing these seeds of discontent, and 3, those people who are using foreign soil to try and create an activity to break India, to try and organize people who could work towards with this sentiment of breaking India. Let's not forget that a lot of the Canadian citizens are from India who have emigrated, and they still have family back in India. And the message that is being spread there is somehow finding its way back into India, into Punjab. And we are also seeing those seeds manifest or take root even on soil, on Indian soil. Now let's take the latest instance where there were people on the 6th of November in Canada's Brampton. They were waving pro-Khalistani flags and also carrying anti-Hindu posters that were bashing Hindus. And these videos and pictures went viral. The Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown, he was actually heckled and confronted in a Hindu temple, and this was by the Hindu community because they questioned him as to why he allowed this. Why is he allowing it under his watch? This was a question that was asked, whether or not he agrees with such misinformation, or is he allowing such misinformation to be allowed to spread deliberately. Now, Patrick Brown is infamous because He is somebody who's got a reputation for fueling or fanning or backing with these Hindu haters or those who are pushing this narrative of Hindu phobia, Hindu misya, and more importantly, an agenda against Bharat. Now, this comes very, very close on the heels of India sending a strong message to the Canadian government over the referendum that was also being planned, and said that these are politically motivated exercises by extremists. Abhishek Jha is now joining us live. We have the entire sequence and videos also from inside the temple, where clearly the priests, the organizing trust of the temple, the management is very, very upset with what is being allowed in and around their temple. Especially at a time when there is supposed to be unity, those sowing seeds of divide seem to be getting a free run on Canadian soil.
So Anand, we have clearly seen those pictures and those photographs where those billboards and hoardings have been pasted across major trucks and various public places where anti-Hindu and anti-India sentiments or propaganda has been pasted. This has been happening under the watch of mayor and the local administration, and this is the reason, this is the concern that the local community expressed to the mayor at Brampton when he was visiting a temple, when they sort of heckled him, also asking an apology and explanation that why, under the watch of authorities, such anti-hatred campaign can be done. In fact, this is one issue that India has also raised officially at multiple diplomatic level. In fact, last week only, MES spokesperson Arindam Bagchi, on a question about referendum of Khalistan happening in Canada, said that they have raised this issue both in Ottawa at High Commissioner level, and in Indian High Commissioner of Canada in Delhi has also been apprised of the India's stand on this issue. Despite the fact that India has been raising and lodging its protest on the Khalistan extremist activities in Canada, there has not been any solid or concrete assurance from Canadian authority that such activities will not be allowed. In the name of freedom of expression and speech, they are saying that they are not recognizing those referendums, but they can't stop anybody from conducting any political activities because that's a free country and everybody can express their opinion. But if something happens to be antagonized a friendly country, India, which and some sentiment or some hatred campaign is being organized at a very protected level, then it should be concerning and the authorities should take action. This is what India has claiming, and this is what India has been telling to the Canadian authorities.
But there doesn't seem to be much that's being done. There seems to be this lobby, and they seem to have grown so strong that even the politicians in Canada are afraid to take any strong steps. Abhishek, thank you for your inputs. Abhishek Banerjee is with us. We also have Tushar Gupta. Namaste, gentlemen. Festive greetings. We're just a day after Kartik Purnima. We're looking ahead to a very, very festive week. But at a time when the Hindu temples will be thronged with devotees, there are posters, banners which are put right in front of their eyes, which is bashing them, which is abusing them, and this is happening on Canadian soil. Should we just say that a government that is supported by somebody who's a known Khalistani and a Khalistani sympathizer, nothing much can be expected from them? Or should we turn around and say, what's the point of our diplomatic muscle, our rising stature in the world, if nations do not understand that they cannot allow subversive activities against India on their soil? Abhishek.
Yeah. Anand, so first of all, this excuse that Canada is giving that of freedom of expression, this is absolutely a joke. First of all, because Canada has very strict hate speech laws. And the second thing is, when it comes to their own national security, they are capable of taking extremely draconian measures. We saw earlier this year when some completely unarmed truck drivers and, these protesters, they approached the Canadian capital, Ottawa. They declared a national emergency. They locked out everything. They closed their bank accounts. They took away their pets. So they are capable of acting very brutally and in very draconian fashion when their own interests are threatened. Now, there are certain reasons why Canada is emerging as this ground zero of Khalistani activity. First of all, we have to understand that there is a tussle for vote bank politics between the Liberal Party led by Trudeau and this new Democratic Party led by this person, Jagmeet Singh. Now, he is a known Khalistani sympathizer, and his party is not small. It got 20% of the vote as far as I checked in the last parliamentary election. So it's a really big party. So they are clearly, there is competitive appeasement for this extremist politics going on. And then again, of course, there are anti-India forces which have realized that, they cannot operate on our soil, but they have access to the diaspora in Canada, in Australia, in UK. And because they have such close ties with their families in India, they are able to, not only organized crime, they are able to push extremism from abroad. And the third thing I would say is that there is a section within India itself which is now taking a whatever it takes approach towards dismantling the current government. If they cannot bring the government down, they will break the country apart. We saw, and they are very good at manufacturing narratives. We saw they manufactured these separatist narratives during the so-called farmer protest last year. And then
Yes.
recently, and we saw that this entire thing that happened in Canada was about the 1984 riots, which is a horrible, horrible event in the history of our country. But you look at how they are changing the narrative regarding that. I will point you, and everybody should read this article. It's on this very dodgy, shady left-wing portal, which was just caught fabricating screenshots. Everybody can go and see the article they brought out recently, because October is the day on which Indira Gandhi was assassinated, and it's the same day, coincidentally, happens to be Sardar Patel's birthday. So if you read their articles, they're very cleverly trying to change the responsibility, move the responsibility away from the Congress and say that no, it's actually Hindu nationalists who are behind this. And now India's Hindu nationalist government is trying to cover up the 1984 riots by celebrating Sardar Patel's birthday as Rashtriya Ekta Divas. Now, anybody can understand this is very vicious, vile propaganda. But this is the kind of thing that is being done by a bunch of shady left-wing portals who now have a whatever it takes approach to against the government.
Whatever it takes, and also they claim to be the intelligentsia, and they have already crowded and they have cornered the academic discourse, and then they are now setting up and pushing narratives. The play of words is phenomenal, but Tushar Gupta, there is also significant impact of what is happening on Canadian soil. There is a direct fallout of it on Indian soil. We saw what happened with Sidhu Moosewala, Deep Sidhu, Waris Punjab Day, there's Amritpal Singh getting a free run in Punjab, and more importantly, this guy Surinder Suri shot dead by a radical. A guy who does not know, has an altercation, picks up a gun and shoots him. And then you find all this kind of rabid literature, and including images of the Canadian referendum on his person. So what's happening in Canada is having a direct impact on what's happening in India.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, Anand. Good evening to Abhishek. Abhishek here made some very important points. And, to add to what he said, Anand, last year, around 2021, during the lockdown, the virus-induced lockdowns in Canada and India, I happened to interact with a lot of Sikhs in Khalistan, which was a proper lobby operating on the referendum. These were people who were advocating for Khalistan using the farmer protest as a premise. And this happened on one of the very active social networking apps that became very viral at that point of time because of the lockdown. And the question you asked them was, what about Khalistan? What's your political model? And their answer was simple, that we want to carve out the Punjab that is in India, not in Pakistan. Their conflict, or the conflict they imagined, was with Hindus, not with any other community, not with the communities in Pakistan. If you ask them about their defense model, Anand, just to give you a peek into their mindset, they used to say that we'll engineer a mutiny within the Indian armed forces from where our Sikh brethren will come and support our project. That is what the mindset of this lobby operating in Canada and specifically Brampton is, that they want to engineer a mutiny in the Indian armed forces. They want to take over Punjab. And if you ask them, would there be place for Hindus? Because Punjab is 40% Hindus. Would there be place for Hindus in Khalistan? The answer used to be absolutely not. So this is the mindset with which this lobby operates. Now, the Canadian government can say that, oh, this is just another political event, we cannot control it. Absolutely wrong. This is a separatist movement that is very much active in their land for the last 25 years. But unfortunately, you answered the question yourself. There is nothing that can be expected from them, given the condition in which the government is running, given the coalitions, the way they are functioning. So at the end of the day, India needs to exercise its diplomatic muscle. India needs to come down heavily and say, either you stop all this or India and Canadian relationship will suffer in the long term, because this is not good. And this is also happening. And I come from Chandigarh, and so I can tell you this is also happening a very negative impact on the youth in Punjab. Already, most of them want to migrate to Canada for better opportunities.
Yes.
But the kind of literature that flew in during the farmers' protest, the entire premise was made about Hindus versus the Sikhs. It was a policy issue. It was about the betterment of Punjab. But at the end of the day, the same lobby, the Khalistan lobby, which wants to engineer a mutiny in the Indian Armed Forces, made it about Hindus versus the Sikhs. 1984 has become about Hindus versus the Sikhs. So at the end of the day, some very disturbing objectives of this entire lobby, and it needs to be dealt with a heavy hand, starting diplomatically. And it's very, very urgently. Anand. There is no time to waste.
Sikhi emerged out of Hinduism, and it was Hindu homes who gave one child towards defending the borders, and it was fighting the Islamists. That's what the Sikhs have done, and the history is rife with those stories. But those stories have not been told. Those stories have been now masked, brushed under the carpet, and a different narrative has come through. So it's all forgotten, Abhishek Banerjee. Now we know what is happening. How do we change this? Is just standing in front of a mayor like Patrick Brown enough? Is just heckling or standing him and asking him and questioning him enough? Or has more to be done? How does India take this up at a level where the Canadians don't dare to do this again? And they cuff up those Khalistanis, because they will turn around and say it was this government itself which gave a free pass to these Khalistani elements to come back to India, which took them off the blacklist, which said that, all right, we embrace you, we come back, what has been done with you is injustice, come back and do good for your own country. But they believe they're going to cut this country out and carve out another one. So what do we do?
Yeah. So Anand, I believe that our response has to be a mix of soft power and hard power. When it comes to the soft power part, we have to start, we have to start engaging more with our diaspora and using it as a means to project power against those who are maligning us. We have to really, because we have a huge diaspora. They have means, they have education, they are well established. We should be able to get our narrative out through them. They should be able to act as a pressure for our country. That's the soft power part. On the hard power side, I believe that given the current political situation in Canada, approaching Canadian politicians will probably not help. We have to get it done through the United States. Because even if you remember why the Canadians cracked down against the trucker, what really happened was that it was the Biden administration which signaled to Trudeau that they have blocked the bridge between the route between Canada and the US. And that's creating troubles for the US. And so if we really get the United States to exert pressure on the Canadians, then we can get things done. And we have leverage on the US now because they really do need us against China.
No, but the US itself is busy harboring those academia and the academic institutions who are pushing that narrative, starting with Rutgers and so many others who are writing this, who are steering this narrative, and they are also so beholden to those groups which have a huge amount of capital to create this. Salvadore Babones on First Post today has written that article. He's an American sociologist where he says that the Western elite are working with the Islamists to create this narrative against India and Hindus. So how do we sort that out? So do we challenge the academia? Do we mount our own counter-offensive, intellectual offensive? Or is it a combination of diplomatical, intellectual, and perhaps somewhere else feedback from ground, from Punjab back to Canada? Right now it is a download from Canada into Punjab.
Absolutely.
Now we have to reverse that perhaps. Tushar?
Yes. Anand, exactly. You make a very important point. See, I agree with Abhishek to that entire combination of diplomatic, hard power, soft power. That's all fine. Let me give you another perspective, because I engaged with this lobby for a very long time last year. And I can tell you, Anand, with great surety, 99% of them wouldn't have the guts to land in India and advocate the same ideology they can do sitting in Canada. But the problem is the downloading of the literature that is creating overnight leaders in Punjab. One of them you named, Amritpal Singh, and the consequences of it was the death of the Shiv Sena leader, which we saw last week. So what we need to worry about is the literature reaching Punjab and the overnight creation of new lobbies, new leaders who might advocate something else. So that would not be only a hindrance between the federal structure, but the relationship between the center and the state, because the government also right now in Punjab, the state government is very feeble. So at the end of the day, our worry begins with Punjab, what's going on there, and that needs to be a show of strength. That is where the federal relationship between the center government and the state government becomes very, very important. But what the intelligence, what the Ministry of Home Affairs needs to watch out for is this overnight lobby that is coming up in Punjab, because 2, 3, 4 years down the lane, they are going to be the next big headache, bigger headache than the lobby in Khalistan, the Khalistan lobby in Canada.
Well, clearly it is a cause for concern because we cannot afford for this narrative to continue to perpetuate and perpetrate and also flourish. Somewhere Justin Trudeau doesn't seem to be getting the message, or perhaps he's incapable of trying to counter these, and the likes of Jagmeet and his political party cannot get so much of traction. 40% of the trucker business is now controlled by this entire Sikh lobby, and there is a huge now number which is fast turning into a very, very strongly anti-Hindu lobby. So beyond a political movement, it's now become, it's taking shape of religious hatred or bigoted movement, which is also being fanned further by this entire Pakistani group, which is also there in Canada, which is trying to endear itself and trying to show that Muslims and Sikhs are supposed to be together, because the history has now been erased. The past has been forgotten. Abhishek, final word. Should that past be brought as a reminder from the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century onwards?
Yeah, so I mean, Anand, you and I, we have grown up in India. I am actually not aware of any Hindu who feels, has some kind of separatist mentality against the Sikhs. We have all embraced the Sikhs. We all have Sikh friends. We have always treated them as, as one of us. I mean, we never saw them as separate. But one thing that I would mention with regard to the US is that the academia and that elite part, that is one lobby. If you look at the New York Times and the Washington Post today, yesterday actually, together, both of them published articles saying that, India should take the initiative in bringing peace in Ukraine. Such articles cannot come out without sanction from the US military industrial complex. So, there is also another lobby. So the US has multiple lobbies, and we should be tapping whichever lobby which we can use to our benefit, and we can pressure the Canadians through that.
True. Abhishek and Tushar, always a pleasure speaking with you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Have to move on. Big development again coming from the United Kingdom, and this one pertains to an absconder, somebody who's wanted by the authorities, and finally the courts have ordered his extradition. It's a big victory for the Indian agencies, as Sanjay Bhandari has now been ordered to be extradited out of the United Kingdom. He does have the appeal with the UK High Court within 45 days against this extradition judgment. Extradition based on a request from the ED and the income tax. The request is over entire black money case. The ED and IT both had submitted evidence of Sanjay Bhandari holding black money abroad. And after the ED submitted documents with the court in the UK, the court decided to tag Sanjay with a GPS locator around his wrist. And also, so because he was deemed a flight risk, more importantly, they restricted his movement to a certain portion of the United Kingdom, out of which he was out of, all other places were out of bounds for him. He was asked not to leave a particular area of London. Ashish Merishi is now joining us live. Ashish, how significant or how big is this? I'll come to you. Sanjay Suri is also with us. Sanjay, what happened in court? Now, in this extradition process, is this now going to be a long-drawn fight again in the High Court? Or is that also going to be time-bound in terms of the High Court's decision on what the court has now decided today?
Well, we could be looking at a High Court decision, presuming that there will be an appeal, and almost certainly there will be an appeal, perhaps a few months down the line, because the next step is for the court order from the Westminster Magistrates Court here to be sent to the Home Office for the Home Secretary to sign that order. That is a rubber stamping, and that is a matter of process. It is not likely that there will be any reversal or modification of the decision by the Home Secretary. But once the Home Secretary confirms the order, then that opens the path for an appeal to be made to the High Court. That typically could be heard within a couple of months from now, and then it will be at two stages. There will be written submissions, then an oral submission, and then we could be looking at a High Court decision a few months down the line. So that is, so far as the extradition process goes. The question is whether this process itself will be final. We saw that Vijay Mallya lost out on extradition and then moved in parallel to seek asylum. Now, with Sanjay Bhandari, if that parallel track is activated, then there's no saying how long that will take, because that is a process that the Home Office decides on, and once that goes to the court, that is held in private. There's no public access to those proceedings. So there is a question there whether that parallel track will trip up this whole process.
Well, absolutely. How significant is this? He's a wanted man. There are a lot of answers that he can provide, especially with the arms dealings. How big a victory is it for the Indian agencies to procure this verdict from the court? It's a long-drawn battle, though, Ashish.
Certainly, it's a long-drawn battle. He's got 45 days to basically apply before the High Court. And let's see if the High Court accepts the application or not, Anand. But, just to refresh our memories, we were the first channel to track down Sanjay Bhandari, and our colleague Sanjay Suri was manhandled, or he was physically attacked by Sanjay Bhandari and his cousin Sumit Chadha. But ultimately, if you go into the background of the case, is very clear that there was a case registered by the Income Tax Department on the basis on which the extradition plea has been filed. There was a black money case which suggested that Sanjay Bhandari did not disclose his assets abroad under the Black Money Undisclosed Foreign Assets Act, and that is why based on that prosecution complaint filed by the Income Tax Department, ED took cognizance because it comes under the scheduled offence as well, and finally ED and Income Tax filed an extradition request. The judgment was expected in November, and the judgment is finally out. But certainly we all know that getting somebody from abroad, especially United Kingdom, is a Herculean task, and we don't know getting them physically to India would actually be practically possible or not.
Well, Sanjay Suri and Ashish Merishi, thank you for your inputs. And Sanjay, great job done. I thought you'd yourself be talking about it when we came to you on the Sanjay Bhandari story, but Ashish has done the needful. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we keep you at the forefront of our investigations and the stories. Thanks to our team of reporters like Sanjay and Ashish. Phenomenal job done, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break here on The Nation at 5. When we come back, we turn the spotlight towards Karnataka, where a certain Congress leader has a problem with the word Hindu. We tell you why. Stay with us.
I'm again requesting. Okay, now you ask the question.
Sir, yesterday the ruling front, CPM top brass gave its note to the government to amend the university laws, indicating the removal of governor from the chancellorship of university.
So
what?
Why my response should be there? Why I should respond to these silly and foolish and something? They are what they are doing. Do you remember I had offered that I want to be relieved of the chancellor's position? Why they wrote 4 letters to me, pleading with me. And finally the last letter, draft they sent to me in the Raj Bhavan, which draft will be acceptable to me. I made the amendments, no if and but, and Chief Minister's letter assuring that there will be no interference in the universities, not only by the government but by any source. Only then they were able to persuade me to resume the duties of Vice Chancellor.
നമുക്ക് ഗവർണർ എടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകുന്ന ഒരു നിലപാടിനെ നിയമപരമായിട്ടും ഭരണഘടനാപരമായിട്ടും നമുക്ക് ഫലപ്രദമായി എങ്ങനെ പ്രതിരോധിക്കാമെന്ന കാര്യം പാർട്ടി കൃത്യമായിട്ട് ചർച്ച ചെയ്ത് തീരുമാനത്തിലെത്തിയിട്ടുള്ളതാണ്. ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകാം. അത് പിന്നെ ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകാമെങ്കിൽ എന്തുവാവാം. അതാണ് സർക്കാരിന് ആവശ്യമായ നിലപാട് സ്വീകരിക്കാം. ബില്ലുകൾ തടഞ്ഞു വെച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ബില്ലുകൾ തടഞ്ഞു വെച്ചതുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് നിയമപരമായതും ഭരണഘടനാപരവുമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യണമെന്നുള്ള കാര്യം ആലോചിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഗവൺമെൻറ് ആലോചിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഗവർണറെ ചാൻസലർ സ്ഥാനത്ത് കേരള ഗവൺമെൻറ്റിൻ്റെ നിയമത്തിൻ്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനപ്പെടുത്തിയിട്ടാണിത് യഥാർത്ഥത്തിൽ അധികാരം കിട്ടിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. ആ അധികാരം നൽകേണ്ടതുണ്ടോ?
Back on The Nation at 5 with the latest from American sociologist Salvadore Babones. Around the 15th or 16th of September, if I remember correctly, he had written an article where he had challenged the intellectual houses, the data houses, knowledge houses, which send out these studies and reports which talk about the health of various countries, and why places, outfits like Freedom House, Economic Intelligence Unit and others were actually presenting the wrong picture. Salvadore Babones at that time had gone ahead and done a deep dive on the data that was analyzed, and he'd also challenged the kind of intellectuals who are writing these reviews, these one-page, two-page reviews that formed the Freedom House dockets or Economic Intelligence Unit dockets, and he said that there is a narrative that's being pushed, and that narrative is against India. Now, Salvadore Babones has today contributed yet another detailed piece with First Post, and where he has come out and said that just as Western anti-Semites are offended by the success of Israel, Western anti-Hinduists, and that's what he has written, anti-Hinduists are offended by the success of India or Bharat. Now, Professor Babones has written this long piece with First Post. It's already gone viral. Do peruse it. Have a look, because every single word of what he writes seems to have an element of rings true, let's say that. And he's also backing up with numbers and some facts. He's also said that Indians will be very familiar about the form. What is the form? They said that even more of them know nothing about India, but whatever individual Westerners may think of India, the West is thoroughly anti-Indian, and that institutional hatred is getting stronger by the hour. And Indians will be very familiar with this from their school textbooks, which are full of stories about the anti-Indianism of the colonial era. To be more accurate, British as well as French and Portuguese colonization was specifically anti-Hindu, a tendency that ultimately led to the violence of partition. Now, he also called out the intent that when you do a deep dive into statistics, data to look at the health of a nation, you're supposed to reflect the numbers as they show, or whatever the numbers throw up. Should you be doctoring the numbers or trying to use the kind of numbers that are convenient to you so that it could fit a particular narrative, then can such outfits be called non-partisan, or are they openly biased? Where does this bias stem from? He says resentment for India and Hindus, but this is what he called out, saying this is how I expose them when they define a decade as 2010 to 2020, because the two data points at 2010 and 2020 are convenient and push a particular narrative. But if you were to take the real term of the statistical term 2010 to 2011, or 2010 to 2019, or 2011 to 2020, that's how you should read the data. But that didn't serve the purpose of the academic or those who are writing the report, and that's why they took the statistics like that. Now, so he's done that deep dive, read through the fine print, and also sussed out this particular effort or narrative. Somewhere this also rings with what authors like Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijay Vishwanathan have pointed out in Breaking India 2.2 or Snakes in the Ganga. Listen into what he had to say, and then we'll go back to Abhishek Banerjee, Tushar Gupta, and we'll see if we have Professor Nachiketa Tiwari also joining us. Your opinion piece on India at 75 through some very interesting observations, especially those about the independent democracy watchers who you believe perhaps owe India an apology. Why do you say so?
Well, my opinion piece is based on a research paper that's been published in Quadrant Magazine and now republished on the print in India. The research paper is an examination of the three major democracy organizations: Freedom House in the United States, the Economic Intelligence Unit in the UK, and the Varieties of Democracy Institute in Sweden. In that research paper, I examine literally all of the reasons they give for India's troubling decline in democracy since 2018, and have found errors, inconsistencies, and I think outright misrepresentations in all of them.
What did you find? Was this agenda against India as a country, or was this agenda against the BJP, and more specifically against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a popularly elected Prime Minister with a larger mandate the second time around?
I don't think these organizations are anti-Modi or anti-BJP, and they're certainly not anti-India. However, these organizations reflect the opinion of the intellectuals, of the experts, of the journalists, of the academics who report back to them. That is, these organizations don't collect their own information. They use information that's out in the public sphere, and they hire academics and journalists to write sections of their reports for them. So a report from one of these organizations may be 250 pages long. The India section is a couple of pages, and that's written on behalf of the organization by somebody. So I suspect what's happened is that these reports on India simply reflect the overall opinion of India's intellectual class. Not just India's intellectual class, but the expat or NRI intellectual class who are concerned with Indian matters. Look, a professor at Harvard who studies India, who may be of Indian background, has much more influence on a report like this than an Indian author, in India who is not connected to international organizations. The report reflects the politics of those who are contributing to it, not necessarily any conspiracy by these organizations to downgrade India.
We've got many developments, ladies and gentlemen, but I have with me not just Abhishek Banerjee and Tushar Gupta, but also Professor Nachiketa Tiwari, who's teaching at the IIT Kanpur, and also Dushyant Sridhar, again an engineer and also a student of Vedanta. Namaste to everybody. This is what Professor Babones has written. He's also studied this, but we know this intellectual discourse and how it is championing a narrative. Now, how would you respond to this, Tushar Gupta, if I can start with you?
Academia and in the intellectual classes to be believed, there is no bigger dictatorship than India. There is no community as violent as the Hindu community. There is no leader closer to Hitler than Narendra Modi. So over a period of time, this entire intellectual class has lost its credibility. Today, they come out with reports which puts Bangladesh or Pakistan or Sri Lanka above India in certain indexes. And there are people on our side in India, that is, who latch on to these rankings, to these reports, which are just figments of imagination to put the country in a bad light. But at the end of the day, their credibility is now exposed. The credibility is not even under question, it's exposed. No one wants to believe them. And yes, it's severely anti-Hindu. Look at how Narendra Modi, even after 8 years of excellent governance, is referred to in most Western news outlets. Hindu nationalist leader. Is Narendra Modi a leader of only the Hindus in India? Is he not a leader of every other community, starting with Muslims, ending with Jains? But still, the Western bias towards the Indian leadership, towards the Indian country, and most importantly, towards Hindus as a whole, is very, very open and unapologetic, and it needs to be called out in the strongest of words.
So Professor Nachiketa Tiwari, a president who swears on the Bible is democratic, is all-inclusive, but a president or a prime minister who swears on the Constitution is a nationalist and termed as a Hindu nationalist. How does this narrative prosper? And sadly, there are Indian intellectuals who are sitting there and pushing this narrative.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that this reflects a very poor understanding of the word Hindu. It also feeds into a lot of terminologies which have been coined by the Britishers. And in recent times, new terminology has been coined and it has been totally distorted, which is this Hindutva. So broadly speaking, you look at this whole narrative and in this three words come into picture. One is Hindu, then there is Hinduism, and then there is Hindutva. And then just today I was seeing that there was a news item that one gentleman from Karnataka is arguing.
Yeah, we'll go to that in just a bit. We'll go to that in just a bit. But right now it's the international narrative. The Western elite does this stem out of resentment where they say that no matter what, let's try and debase these words and by default continue to show India in poor light.
Yeah, so I mean, this is not new because historically also this has been done. I mean, for instance, when you look at this word Hinduism, I mean, the word Hinduism itself is pretty derogatory because when you look at, let's say, the word, the meaning of this term ism in dictionary, you see that it, as a noun, it appears as a set of beliefs, especially ones that you disapprove of. So this is what the dictionary meaning is there. And then in that context, you have all these terms: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Shintoism, Confucianism, and then maybe material religions like communism. Then you have Judaism. But then you have Islam and Christianity. So earlier, actually, even Islam was referred by colonial people as Mohammedanism. But they got their act right, and Islamic scholars made a very forceful argument that, well, it is not proper to call Islam as Mohammedanism because it's not an ism in the context or in the sense in which the dictionary describes it as. And it was, correctly, now people refer it to as Islam. So similarly, I mean, this Hinduism also has been coined. it has been constructed out of this term called Hindu. But the appendage of ism is a colonial construct, and you'll be surprised to know that it was actually first coined officially by Monier Williams. This is in 1877. So there was a society for promoting Christian knowledge. Mr. Monier Williams, who was a member of it, and in that society actually brought out a series of books in a series known as Non-Christian Religious Systems. And in that series, the first time we had a book by the name Hinduism. Now, interestingly, if you go and dig deeper into it, Monier Williams was aware that this new terminology he is coming up with is problematic, because the moment he used the term ism, it has to be associated with a single book or a prophet or a single god.
Right.
So he was aware that there is so much of diversity and apparent incompatibility. So he actually said that, okay, I'm going to solve this problem by breaking up this Hindu world into two big parts. The first, he called it as esoteric Hinduism or Brahmanism. So all this modern narrative about Brahmanical, it actually comes from Monier Williams' terminology, Brahmanism. And there he referred this esoteric Hinduism or Brahmanism as, something related to Upanishads, highly philosophical, sophisticated. So guys who are involved into this understanding Upanishads, they get some sort of a superiority complex. So you pump up that kind of imagination into those people. And then the regular Hinduism, when I do a puja or a tilak or, lots of you puja, all these things, he called this as regular Hinduism or exoteric Hinduism or just Hinduism. And another terminology in subsequent times which got coined was
little Hinduism.
So there was great Hinduism and there was little Hinduism.
Great Hinduism, mediocre or middle Hinduism, and lower Hinduism. This is how you're saying this entire aspect was coined, and this narrative was skewed back in 1877. That's the history. But nobody knows all of that today. Today, everybody is busy coining words and just attaching meaning to it and further debasing it. What he is also saying is that Islamists are working with the Western elite because they just have a resentment for Bharat, and they have a resentment for those who reside in Bharat. So, anti-Hinduism, anti-India, this whole thing stems from resentment. Agree, disagree, Abhishek Banerjee?
Yeah, so Anand, I will quickly give three simple examples. The first is, we all know that, Rishi Sunak's wife, her family runs a very big, major, well-known business in India. And if you see today left-wing rags like Guardian, you will be surprised to see that they are saying that she has some kind of secret fortune in India. I mean, can you imagine somebody calling Infosys a secret company? So that is the level of madness. But you compare this directly to Biden's son, who is actually involved in shady deals with billionaires in Ukraine and China. The left-wing ecosystem cannot ask any question from Biden's son. They locked down the account of the New York Post because they wanted to question. Then another example I'll give you is from Leicester, where, this riot took place, this anti-Hindu riot happened last month maybe. And there, in order to investigate this, the city of Leicester, it appointed an academic by the name of Chris Allen, who is actually a 9/11 conspiracy theorist, to investigate what happened in Leicester. So this is the situation. And the third example I'll give you is from the US, where, some legislators are trying to push a piece of resolution in the US Congress to recognize the Hindu genocide in Bangladesh during the 1971 war, Operation Searchlight. We all know this is recorded history. Archie Blood, who is the US ambassador in Bangladesh, has recorded it. And they are saying, no, if you do this, you are promoting Hindu nationalism and Hindutva, which they have declared as this Nazi thing. And now they can give any kind of hate speech against Hindus. You just replace the word Hindu with the word Hindutva, and then you can do pretty much anything. So it's basically open season against the Hindus. And the other thing is, I would remark about Professor Babones, while I agree with almost 90% of what he said, I would add one little note, is that it's not just the Indian elites who are anti-India. I would say many of the global institutions are also structurally anti-India. This is part of the ancient hatred against pagans. And the day India became the world's fifth or sixth largest economy, that is when George Soros declared that, he's going to spend $1 billion to put Modi out
Right.
of power. And I think India's politics has been internationalized on that very day, and they are coming for us. That's just a fact.
Dushan Sridhar?
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste. Do you agree, disagree with Professor Babones? And also, this has been reflective even by authors like Rajiv Malhotra, Dr. Vijay Vishwanathan, who have tried to expose the academia and accuse them of deliberately pushing a narrative which Professor Babones believes stems out of resentment.
Anand, namaskaram. First of all, the understanding of Hinduism, Hindutva, the understanding of our itihasas and Puranas amongst the intellectual class itself is very, very weak, Anand. So this impatience to not understand the essence of our itihasas and Puranas results in such articles, in such opinion editorials, just not in India, worldwide as well. So this is not particular only to the Indian narrative, even otherwise. The other aspect to understanding the larger picture of this is probably this is the only civilization that has managed to continue itself in its beliefs, in its philosophy, in its theology after so many invasions. Otherwise, many such civilizations which were at par with the Vedic civilization, like the Persian, vanished. So the belief systems, the ability to connect with nature, the ability to propitiate and respect nature, all this is continued in this civilization. So probably the Western thought, I'm not blaming any particular religion, any particular country, the Western thought processes, why should this civilization survive? When I say, I'm not telling with a sinistrous look, it's a very logical question that they ask to themselves. How can this civilization manage to survive? So when this thought develops into vengeance, that vengeance manifests itself into writing. And that's why you have such articles coming from the so-called reputed newspapers and dailies in the West. So I feel the only way out is not to change their mindset, because they are irreversible, incorrigible, and irreparable at the current scenario, but to probably educate the current mass, the young population in our country with understanding this about Hinduism. See, now when I've used the word Hinduism, of course, my mind says don't use the word ism to it. But let's take it in a positive note. Why should we not start learning about our itihasas and Puranas in the schools? And probably there'll be a stage where we can have a very intellectual debate across all channels, where every child in school is able to understand the essence of this beautiful civilization.
Right, very rightly said. Now coming back to the local issue, where Ramesh Jarkiholi of the Congress party, even though the Congress has distanced itself, has come out and made these comments in Belagavi, where he says that the word Hindu is, he's called it a dirty word, and he says it's something which the Persians have coined, and it's come to us, and we don't need to take this word at all. This concept doesn't apply to us. And he has gone forward further out and explained, saying that this is something which has been forcibly imposed on us, and we don't even have a concept like this at all. There is nothing called Hindu at all on our soil. Let's listen into what Satish Jarkiholi had to say, and then go back to the panel.
हिंदू धर्म, वो धर्म, ये धर्म, हिंदू शब्द कहाँ से आ गया? ये हमारा है? पर्शियन का है? पर्शियन का है? ईरान, इराक, कजाकिस्तान, उज्बेकिस्तान, फिर भारत का उधर का क्या संबंध है? फिर आपका कैसा होगा हिंदू? फिर उसका मीनिंग आपको समझ में आ गया तो आपके आप शर्म आ जाएंगे। हिंदू का जो मीनिंग है वो बहुत गंदी है। कहीं का धर्म, कहीं का शब्द आप लाके हमारे ऊपर जबरदस्ती डाल रहे हैं।
प्रोफेसर नचिकेता तिवारी।
So can I say something on this?
Haji.
See, so again, he may be doing it for political reasons and because of ignorance. But to say he has made two important comments. One is that Hindu is a foreign word. It is of relatively recent times. It's an imposition. And third, it is demeaning and disgustful. It implies something negative. And when you actually look at historical data, all these three concerns are not great. First, it's a very old word. Actually, if you go back to 516 BC, there's this Ara king or Darius, and when he conquered areas or he became important in areas around the Sindhu River, he refers to this as Hindush. So this is very old word. There are actually hieroglyphs which allude to this term HNDWY. But then it's not just that the Persians are talking about this word Hindu. The Chinese also, in their own, each person has their own accents and all that. In 445 AD, there's this Chinese author, and he talks about the record of the Western regions, Zhu Zhuan. He talks about Hindus, but then he actually Chineseifies this thing, and he calls them Shendu. So again, it's Sa, Ha, they change, and then Sa becomes Sha. And he says something very important. Shendu, and in that context, he's talking about this land of Bharat, has several hundred separate towns with a governor and separate states which can be numbered in the tens, each with its own king. Although there are small differences among them, they all come under the general name of Shendu. This is a very powerful statement he's making. So people say that, this identity of Hindus, it's a new thing. It has been imposed by Persians and all that. That is not. He's a Chinese guy. He's saying there's diversity, but this diversity, despite this diversity, they still have a thread of commonality, and that's why he uses a common term, Shendu.
And this is in 441.
445 AD. This is prior to the birth of Islam. And then there's this wonderful book written during the time of Akbar. So now, of course, this is post birth of Islam. There's a book known as there. The author of this book, he's a Persian guy. This book has 12 chapters, and in each chapter he describes a religious system. And in chapter 2, he discusses the religious practices of Hindus. And in that group, he includes all sorts of people: Smartis, Vedant, Sankhya, Yogi, Shakti Pujak, Vishnu Pujak, Tarkik, Bodh, Sannyasi, Avdut, and so on and so forth. There's a long list. And he even includes Nanak Panth in that group. And then he says that why do I classify them into one single group? He says, and this is something very important, he says Hindus are those, of course, this is a translation, this is from 1655 CE. He says Hindu. So Hindu, he is using this word explicitly, Hindu. They are those who have been arguing with each other within the same framework of argument over the centuries. I mean, that's what you see when Shankaracharya and Bauddhas are discussing. If they recognize each other as persons whom they can either support or oppose in a religious argument, then both parties are Hindus. The Jains, although they rejected Brahmins, were still Hindus because they were arguing and polemicizing with Brahmins. Such arguments were not taking place between Hindus and Muslims. The Muslims did not share any basic terminology with the others. Hindus had their own framework, an ideological framework, the Semitic framework. So the point is, this is a very old term, Hindu. Hinduism is a new word, new construct. It's an imposition because of this colonial machinations. And Hindutva is the simplest of all. It essentially means at the essence of being a Hindu. That's all. There is nothing complicated
Hinduness or being Hindu, but they try to separate it in terms of narrative and dress it up with narratives. Nachiketa ji, I have limited time, so I just want to get a quick comment from Dushyant Sridhar and
similar for Christianity. I want to use it in Hindi, I'll call it Christianatva. So that is essentially what Hindutva implies, the essence of being a...
Yeah, but everybody is trying to separate it, and it's all giving it a political term. Now, somebody like Ramesh Jarkiholi, he will not dare to say something like this, Dushyant Sridhar, about any other faith or any other religion, any other walk of life. Everybody goes and gets away because of the fact that Hinduism allows for discourse, allows for debate and also difference of opinion. Nobody is going to charge you and come after you and shout Sartan se juda and blasphemy, etc. But that does not mean that people can go ahead and steer and skew narratives to the extent that you are far devoid of the truth.
True.
Anand, Karneshu Atati Prabhutas Karneshu Brahmati Iti. So this is the Vyutpatti for the word Karnata, the state where the laurels of kings who defend the civilization is heard through the years is called Karnata. So I hail from Bangalore, the capital of Karnataka, where we had such great kings of Vijayanagara, Hoysalas, Chalukyas and so on. And today we have reached a stage, Anand, where we have to hear such senseless remarks from people belonging to Karnataka. So that is karma. That said, one thing, people who tried reaching out to this land, to this geography from the western side, be it the Greeks, be it the people from the Middle East, they had words like Indoi, Sindhu, which became Hindu. Interestingly, Anand, the person who has made this remark, he belongs to a party where Sri Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, in his book called The Glimpses of World History, says how this word came into existence. He remarks and quotes the line observation made by the Chinese traveler Huanzhang, who says that I am going to travel to the land of Intu, which is Indu. Indu in Sanskritam, moon, Soma, which is Intu, is what Huanzhang remarks. And he continues, this is called the land of Indu, the land of moon, because if you take from Myanmar, Brahmadesham to Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Bhutan, Nepal, Uttarakhand, then Ladakh, and then Kashmir, it is the Himalayas act like the crescent moon. So this land is the land of the moon because, as per Jyotishya Shastra, Anand, Buddha is Buddhikaraka, gives us intellect. Whereas moon helps in the stability of intellect. That is why when the moon it becomes a full moon or a new moon, even Greeks called such people who exhibited different kinds of behavior as lunatic because it was based on the moon's movement. But here this geography, as per Huanzhang, was called the land of the moon because there is knowledge here. And this remark of Huanzhang has been quoted by Jawaharlal Nehru, the person to whose party he belongs to, in Glimpses of World History. So this land has always been called the land of the knowledge and the land of the rivers, be it Sindhu, which became Hindu, or Intu, which became Hindu. Now the question is, when did this come into existence? When you do not have a predecessor for your civilization, and when you have only successors for your civilization, the responsibility of naming your civilization is always on the successor. Only when you have peers aside you, you will have to come with a name. So the others called us by name because we didn't have a peer at that point in time. There was no competition. So there was no need for us to be named. Only when there are successors, the successors name you. This is basic logic. So I feel, when has politics always adhered to logic? And when have politicians made sense? So
the idea is that we have to steer away from the politics and also go ahead and explain the logic and put the knowledge in front, put the information in form. And that's what we have endeavored to do here in this edition of the Nation at 5. A departure from how we usually construct Nation at 5, ladies and gentlemen, but it's been a stimulating discussion. I've actually run over time. So Tushar and Abhishek, pardon me if I can't come to you for yet another closing comment, but it's been a great discussion. Thank you very much to all our panelists. We're going to wind up this conversation. There is one more big mega news break coming in from Pakistan on the Imran Khan front, but that after a very, very short break. Stay with us.
Finally, the last letter draft they sent to me in the Raj Bhavan, which draft will be acceptable to me. I made the amendments, no if and but, and Chief Minister's letter assuring that there will be no interference in the universities, not only by the government but by any source. Only then they were able to persuade me to resume the duties of Vice Chancellor.
നമുക്ക് ഗവർണർ എടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകുന്ന ഒരു നിലപാടിനെ നിയമപരമായിട്ടും ഭരണഘടനാപരമായിട്ടും നമുക്ക് ഫലപ്രദമായി എങ്ങനെ പ്രതിരോധിക്കാമെന്ന കാര്യം പാർട്ടി കൃത്യമായിട്ട് ചർച്ച ചെയ്ത് തീരുമാനത്തിലെത്തിയിട്ടുള്ളതാണ്. ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകാം. അത് പിന്നെ ഏതറ്റം വരെയും പോകാമെങ്കിൽ എന്തു ആവാം. അതാണ് സർക്കാരിന് ആവശ്യമായ നിലപാട് സ്വീകരിക്കാം. ബില്ലുകൾ തടഞ്ഞു വെച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ബില്ലുകൾ തടഞ്ഞു വെച്ചതുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് നിയമപരമായതും ഭരണഘടനാപരവുമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യണമെന്നുള്ള കാര്യം ആലോചിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഗവൺമെൻറ് ആലോചിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഗവർണറെ ചാൻസലർ സ്ഥാനത്ത് കേരള ഗവൺമെൻറ്റിൻ്റെ നിയമത്തിൻ്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനപ്പെടുത്തിയിട്ടാണിത് യഥാർത്ഥത്തിൽ അധികാരം കിട്ടിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. ആ അധികാരം നൽകേണ്ടതുണ്ടോ എന്ന കാര്യം ചർച്ച ചെയ്യേണ്ടുന്ന അവസ്ഥയിലേക്കാണ് കാര്യങ്ങൾ വന്ന് നിൽക്കുന്നത്. ആവശ്യമായ നിലപാട് നമുക്ക് സ്വീകരിക്കേണ്ടി വരും.
Okay, my colleague Neetu is with us right now to bring us more context. Neetu, we played out for our audiences a few minutes ago a governor's response to the media. And just seeing his anger, that kind of anger from a government official seems unprecedented. Could you bring us more context as to what's brought him to this point? What is the context of this story? And then tell us what we have to look forward to today, please.
See, the governor was quite angry today, saying that he will not speak to two regional media channels, two Malayalam channels, Kairali News and Kairali TV and Media One. He says that they are running a propaganda against them and they are comrades masquerading media persons, and so that is why. That is a response that we saw from Kochi.
Back on the Nation at 5 with the CNN News 18 exclusive on the firestorm in Pakistan over the alleged assassination attempt at Imran Khan. Imran Khan has asked President Alvi to act now, that quote unquote, lead an inquiry to identify the guilty and hold them accountable. CNN News 18 has accessed a letter that's been written to the Pakistan president by Imran Khan. Our investigations editor Manoj Gupta getting us these details. In the letter to the president, Imran Khan has stated that since the removal of the PTI government, the country has been confronted with an ever-increasing scale of false allegations, harassment, arrests and custodial torture. He has alleged that the Interior Minister Rana Salaullah repeatedly issued death threats to him, and that he was informed of an assassination plot hatched by Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah and a senior ministry official. So after there was a face-off with the Punjab Chief Minister Parvez Alai, who refused to write these three names in the FIR, Imran Khan writing to the Pak president saying, you launch the inquiry and get to the bottom of it. Even as the Pakistan courts have said that there needs to be a thorough inquiry and they should look into the entire matter because it is a massive security breach, assassination attempt or not, if you were to, depending upon which side of the political spectrum you want to listen to. But big development this. Abhishek Jha with us with a quick update. Abhishek, so Imran Khan writing this letter to the president, so the PTI wanting to milk this politically to the fullest.
Of course, and it's not that the Pakistan government is not conducting any inquiry. In fact, Supreme Court of Pakistan has also said for this inquiry. But Imran Khan is insisting on the way that he wants this inquiry commission to go about. He has insisted that the name of Shahbaz Sharif and all other Rana Sanaullah Khan and Faisal Aziz, these should also be included in this the FIR. And he has alleged that they have been hatching a plot to kill him way before the actual assassination attempt on his life has happened.
Right. Right. Thank you for your inputs, Abhishek. With that, it's a wrap of this edition of The Nation at 5. Zakir ready with Viewpoint. Stay with us.
Good evening, this is Viewpoint. I'm Zakir Jacob. There were dramatic scenes over the weekend in Brampton, Canada, where Hindu activists gear out the mayor of the city for his openly anti-Hindu and anti-India comments. They also have another peeve with him that there are these posters across the city falsely accusing Hindu groups of killing Sikh infants. Remember, this is also on the back of a second referendum that happened in Canada for a free Khalistan. How can Canada openly allow such blatant anti-India activity to happen on its soil? Does this not go against the UN Charter, where open refuge is being given to activities that target another sovereign state? What can and what should India do? That's what we'll take up on Viewpoint. But first, the story of what